"We no longer have need of your employment," Lana declared, her tone echoing throughout the polished wooden table in our family's conference room. "Empty your workspace by the following day." I studied the expressions surrounding me: board members with surprised looks, executives fidgeting awkwardly in their plush seats, and my sister wearing that smug expression I recognized perfectly. She had anticipated this opportunity for countless years. "Have you finished?" I inquired, maintaining composure despite the rage simmering within. "Indeed, Valerie. That concludes our business," Lana responded, immediately shifting her focus to the subsequent meeting topic. I collected my writing pad and writing instrument, acknowledged the board members courteously, and departed while preserving my self-respect. The substantial door shut behind me with a gentle sound that understated the significance of what had just transpired. I had been dismissed from our family enterprise, Connors and Tate Solutions, a corporation I had contributed to expanding from a faltering regional logistics company to a nationwide industry leader. My identity is Valerie Connors, aged 43, and until 10 minutes prior, I served as Executive Vice President of Operations at the organization my grandfather established. Throughout more than 10 years, I had been the person obtaining agreements, developing customer relationships, and organizing the transactions that generated the majority of our income. While Lana concentrated on company reputation and engaging in political maneuvering with board members, I had served as the force propelling our expansion in Nashville, Tennessee. I proceeded to my workspace, a corner location I had earned through years of commitment. My administrative assistant, Natalie, glanced up, her face immediately showing worry upon seeing my expression. "Val, what occurred in that meeting?" I shut the door before responding. "Lana terminated my employment, taking effect right away. I must vacate by tomorrow." Natalie's jaw dropped. "She lacks the authority to do that. Without your presence, this organization would. She possesses that authority, and she exercised it." I settled into my chair, permitting myself only one instant of disbelief before my mental processes began operating. Dad appointed her CEO and the board gave their approval. She's in control now. But what's her reasoning? "You've secured more than 70% of our significant customers." I grinned slightly. "And that's exactly the reason. I've overshadowed her for years, and she found it unbearable." However, as the initial surprise diminished, an unusual tranquility came over me. I opened my desk compartment and retrieved a leather folder I had maintained specifically for this situation. Within were documents I had prepared carefully over the previous 5 years. Agreements, contracts, and legal documentation. "Natalie," I said, my voice more stable now, "do you recall that reorganization I executed 5 years ago? The one where I established VC Strategy Group?" Her eyes grew wide with understanding. "Your Consulting LLC, the entity that technically maintains all the customer contracts." I confirmed with a nod, permitting myself the first authentic smile since entering that board gathering. "I believe it's appropriate to remind my sister precisely who generates the business in this organization." I had anticipated this development years earlier. Our father, James Connors, had consistently preferred Lana despite her average business capabilities. She possessed the appropriate appearance, the proper connections, and most significantly, she never questioned his leadership. I conversely had concepts. Too many concepts for a daughter in a conventional family enterprise. "You're creating disturbances, Val," Dad would comment whenever I suggested a new approach or improvement. "Let's maintain our current methods." What functioned, evidently, was allowing Lana to receive recognition for my innovations. While I developed relationships with shipping corporations, storage facilities, and corporate customers throughout the Southeast, Lana served as the representative at industry gatherings. While I negotiated conditions that increased our profit margins by double-digit percentages annually, Lana delivered presentations to the board utilizing my data. Our distinctions went beyond business matters. During our upbringing, Lana was the pageant winner, homecoming royalty, sorority leader, all charisma and social elegance. I was the practical one, more fascinated by logistics challenges than country club social dynamics. "Why can't you emulate your sister?" Mom would inquire without malice. "She establishes connections so effortlessly." What they failed to comprehend was that I also established connections, just different types. Rather than cocktail gatherings, I developed relationships in meeting rooms. Instead of social advancement, I concentrated on generating value. And gradually, customers began trusting me, not the company reputation or Lana's refined presentations. 5 years earlier, when discussions of succession planning commenced, I executed my strategy. With my lawyer's assistance, I established VC Strategy Group LLC, a consulting corporation with precisely one customer, Connors and Tate. On documentation, it appeared as a tax optimization approach. In actuality, it was my protection plan. "This arrangement provides us with adaptability," I explained to Dad when I suggested it. "It allows me to negotiate directly with customers without all the corporate bureaucracy." He endorsed it without grasping its consequences. Why would he question anything that enhanced our financial performance? To him, it was simply another of my effective small adjustments, not the basis of my autonomy. Over time, I transferred all significant customer relationships to my LLC. The documentation was available for anyone to examine if they took the trouble to investigate. However, Lana was too occupied planning her CEO office redesign to notice that the agreements listed VC Strategy Group as the primary service provider with Connors and Tate as merely the implementation partner. Dad's retirement declaration last month had expedited everything. The succession strategy was revealed. Lana would assume the CEO position and I would continue in my operational capacity, essentially performing the labor while she held the designation. Or so they believed. The morning following my termination, I arrived early to pack my workspace. The building was silent, with most staff not expected for another hour. I had selected this timing intentionally. No need for spectators. As I packed family photographs and recognition awards, my phone buzzed. It was Beth Winters from Skyline Distribution, our biggest customer. "Valerie, what's happening? I just received an odd email from your sister stating she's my new contact person." I smiled to myself. "Good morning, Beth. Indeed, there have been some modifications. Lana is the new CEO. But our contract is with you," Beth said, bewilderment clear in her voice. "The agreement is with VC Strategy Group. Does she comprehend that?" "I don't believe she's examined the contracts yet," I responded, maintaining a neutral tone. "Would you prefer that I explain things to her?" "Please do. We contracted with you, not with Connors and Tate. Your knowledge is what we're compensating for." After disconnecting, I continued packing, now with a more optimistic spirit. By the time I completed the task, similar calls had arrived from 3 other major customers. None of them had any intention of collaborating with Lana. At 8:30 a.m., precisely as the office began filling with staff members, my phone illuminated with Lana's name. I allowed it to ring twice before responding. "Hello, Lana. Where are the customer files?" Her voice was tense with controlled alarm. "And why is Beth Winters claiming she won't collaborate with us anymore?" "The customer files are precisely where they've always been," I responded calmly, "in the shared database organized by account. Regarding Beth, she's exercising her contractual privileges." "What are you discussing?" "What contractual privileges?" I could visualize her perfectly. Standing in her new CEO workspace, probably wearing one of her perfect business suits, her face red with frustration. "Examine the contract headers, Lana. All of our major accounts are contracted through VC Strategy Group, my consulting corporation. Connors and Tate is merely the implementation partner. The customers chose to collaborate with me, not the family reputation." The silence on the opposite end was overwhelming then. "You cannot do this." I couldn't suppress the laugh that emerged. "I already have. 5 years ago, actually, with Dad's endorsement and the board's signature on every document. This is sabotage." Her voice increased an octave. "No, Lana. This is commerce. You desire to be CEO. Congratulations. But the relationships, the trust, the actual revenue-generating agreements, those belong to me. By the time I disconnected, Natalie had appeared at my doorway with a cardboard container of her own possessions. I resigned this morning, she announced with a smile. Informed HR I'll be joining VC Strategy Group effective immediately. The realization struck me completely. This wasn't merely about sweet revenge against Lana. This was my opportunity to construct something genuinely mine. I picked up my container and took one final look at the workspace where I'd spent the past 15 years. Let's proceed, I said. We have a corporation to establish. I spent the remainder of the day in my home workspace making calls to every major customer. By evening, I had confirmed what I already suspected. All 14 of our top-tier accounts would be accompanying me. Combined, they represented over 80% of Connors and Tate's annual income. What about implementation? Asked Thomas Graham from Evergreen Supply Chain. You've got the relationships, Val, but can you manage the actual logistics operations? It was a reasonable inquiry. Until yesterday, I'd had Connors and Tate's infrastructure available. Their storage network, their transportation partners, their software systems. I've been preparing for this transition for some time, I assured him. I've already established partnerships with 3 regional implementation centers. Your operations won't experience any interruption. What I didn't mention was that those partnerships had only been completed that afternoon through a series of phone calls and hastily executed temporary contracts. I was constructing the aircraft while operating it. By 9 p.m., my dining room table was covered with legal notebooks, my laptop, and an empty pizza container. I had the customers, I had Natalie, and I had a framework for operations. What I lacked was a team. As if sensing my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a message from Jordan Ellis, our former operations manager. Heard what happened? Lana's panicking. Half the ops team is prepared to leave. Are you hiring? Before I could respond, another message arrived. This one from Lana. Emergency board meeting tomorrow, 8 a.m. Your attendance is mandatory. I laughed aloud. Mandatory. She had terminated me just hours ago. Now I was suddenly essential. I texted Jordan back. Send me names. Everyone who's interested. Competitive packages for everyone. To Lana, I simply responded. I'll have my lawyer present. My phone rang immediately. I let it go to voicemail. When it rang again, I finally answered. This isn't a request, Valerie, Lana snapped. The board wants to understand what's occurring with our customer base. You owe them an explanation. I don't owe anyone anything, I replied evenly. You terminated me. Remember. Your services are no longer required. Those were your precise words. That was before I understood the situation with the contracts. The contracts that have been in effect for 5 years. The ones that were approved by Dad and the board. Those contracts. You intentionally misled everyone. I took a deep breath, suppressing my anger. No, Lana. I created a business structure that protected both the company and the customers. It's not my fault that you never bothered to understand how our business actually functions. That's your responsibility. Dad will never forgive you for this. It was a harsh attack, but an anticipated one. Our father had always been her winning card. Perhaps. But unlike you, I've learned to exist without his approval. Good luck with your meeting tomorrow. After disconnecting, I sat in silence for several minutes, allowing the significance of the day to settle over me. I had spent 15 years preparing for this moment. Not consciously, but I'd always known on some level that Lana would eventually force me out. My LLC hadn't been created as a weapon. It was protection. A method to safeguard the value I'd built from family politics. My phone buzzed again, a message from our father. We need to talk. I set the phone aside without replying. Whatever he had to say could wait until tomorrow. Tonight, I needed to focus on building a company from nothing with customers already expecting service. The irony wasn't lost on me. In attempting to sideline me, Lana had inadvertently provided me the motivation I needed to break free. 4 years, I'd been investing my talents into a company that would never truly belong to me. Now I had the chance to build something that was mine. I opened my laptop and typed the first line of a new business plan. VC Strategy Group. Full-service logistics solutions. It had a pleasant sound to it. The following morning brought a series of developments. By 7 a.m., Jordan had sent me a list of 8 employees ready to join me immediately. By 7:30, my attorney, Grace Levinson, was on her way to the Connors and Tate board meeting to represent my interests. And by 8 a.m., I was sitting in a temporary office space I'd managed to secure overnight, conducting my first staff meeting as the official CEO of VC Strategy Group. The situation is unique, I explained to the small team gathered around a conference table. We have the customers and the expertise, but we're building our infrastructure as we go. It won't be simple, but we've got something Connors and Tate doesn't have anymore. The relationships that matter. Natalie and Jordan nodded confidently. The others, mostly analysts and account managers who had followed Jordan, looked nervous but determined. What about the warehouse agreements? Asked Michael Perez, one of our logistics specialists. Connors and Tate has exclusivity with most of the facilities in the region. They do, I acknowledged, which is why we're not competing on that front. I've secured partnerships with facilities in Chattanooga and Louisville. We'll route through them until we can establish our own local presence. The meeting was interrupted by a call from Grace. I put her on speaker. The board meeting just concluded, she reported. It was heated. Tell me, I said, gesturing for the team to remain. Lana attempted to argue that your LLC structure was a breach of fiduciary duty. She wanted the board to pursue legal action. My stomach tightened despite my confidence in our legal position. And the board shut her down completely. Apparently, 2 of the members had actually read the contracts when they were signed and understood exactly what they were approving. They reminded her that the structure had delivered exceptional results for 5 years. Relief washed over me. So, no lawsuit. No lawsuit, but they did authorize her to make you a counteroffer. They want to bring VC Strategy Group in as a formal permanent contractor with a 5-year commitment. Essentially, they're offering to legitimize the exact arrangement you already had, but with better terms. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or scream. They terminate me, then offer to hire my company? Essentially, yes. The offer is actually quite good. 7 figures annually, guaranteed minimums, performance bonuses. They're desperate, Val. Of course they are. They just lost 80% of their revenue stream overnight. I looked around at my new team, all watching intently. Tell them I'll review their proposal, but we're moving forward with direct client relationships in the meantime. After ending the call, I turned back to the team. It seems we have options. Are you considering it? Jordan asked, his expression concerned. Going back to them as a contractor. I understood his worry. He had just quit his job to join me. They all had. I'm not considering anything that doesn't include all of you, I assured them. But having Connors and Tate as a client rather than an employer could be advantageous while we build our own operations. The temporary office door opened and a courier delivered a thick envelope. Inside was the formal offer from the board along with a handwritten note from my father. You've outplayed us all. I should have made you CO years ago. I stared at the note, emotions churning. After decades of being overlooked, my father had finally recognized my value, but only after I'd demonstrated my power to destroy the company he'd built. The buzzing of my phone pulled me from my thoughts. It was a text from Lana. This isn't over. Of course it wasn't. Lana had never been one to accept defeat gracefully. But for the first time in our long, complicated relationship, I wasn't worried about her threats. I had the clients, I had a growing team, and most importantly, I had leverage. The coming weeks established a grueling new reality. Building a company from scratch while servicing existing clients proved even more challenging than I'd anticipated. We worked 14-hour days, turning our temporary office into a command center of organized chaos. Each morning began with an all-hands meeting to tackle the day's most pressing issues. Each evening ended with a review of what we'd accomplished and what still needed attention. The pace was unsustainable but necessary for survival. 3 weeks in, I finally had time to properly respond to the board's offer. I invited Grace to review my counter-proposal before sending it. "This is aggressive," she noted, reading through the terms. "You're asking for double their offer plus equity in Connors and Tate." 5%, I clarified. "Enough to have a voice, not enough to trigger resentment." Grace leaned back in her chair. "Val, can I be frank? This feels personal." "Of course it's personal. They're family." "That's not what I mean. This feels like you're trying to prove something rather than making the best business decision." Her observation stung because it contained truth. Was I pushing too hard to make a point? The board's initial offer had been generous. Doubling down might be unnecessarily antagonistic. "You're right," I conceded. "Revise it to a 20% increase over their offer with the equity request intact. That's fair value for what we bring to the table." Grace nodded approvingly. "Much better. Now what about your sister? She's been notably quiet since that text message." I'd been wondering the same thing. Lana's silence was uncharacteristic and concerning. "I have a meeting with her tomorrow," I admitted. "Just the two of us, away from the company. She requested it. Do you want me there?" I shook my head. Some conversations need to happen without lawyers. The following day, I met Lana at a small coffee shop equidistant from both our offices. She was already seated when I arrived, her expression unreadable. "You appear exhausted," she said as I sat down. "Building a company is draining," I replied. "You'd understand that if you'd ever done it." It was a cheap shot, but weeks of stress had worn my diplomacy thin. Lana didn't take the bait. "I've been doing some reflection," she said, stirring her coffee, "about why you set up that LLC structure in the first place. Enlighten me. You never trusted us. Not me, not Dad, not the board. You always needed your own safety net." I considered her words. "Trust has to be earned, Lana. Dad spent years overlooking my contributions while elevating yours. You spent years taking credit for my work. What exactly was I supposed to trust?" "We're family," she said, as if that explained everything. "Family businesses fail precisely because people confuse family loyalty with business sense," I countered. "Dad made you CEO because you're his daughter, not because you were the best person for the job. And you created a secret company to steal our clients because you're what? Some misunderstood business genius. I created a structure that protected the value I built. Value that you and Dad were happy to benefit from until you decided I was expendable." Lana's facade finally cracked. "You want to know why Dad made me CEO instead of you? Because you're ruthless, Val. This stunt with the contracts proves it. You'd burn down the whole company to prove a point." Her words hit harder than I expected. Was that how they saw me? As someone willing to destroy our family legacy out of spite? "I didn't burn anything down," I said quietly. "You lit the match when you fired me. I'm just making sure I don't get consumed in the flames." We stared at each other across the table. Decades of sisterly competition distilled into this moment of brutal honesty. "So what happens now?" Lana finally asked. That was the million-dollar question. 3 months after Lana fired me, I stood in the lobby of Covenir Defense, our newest and largest client. Their contract would push VC Strategy Group's annual revenue past $40 million, nearly double what my team had managed while at Connors and Tate. "Impressive operation you've built in such a short time," remarked Edward Hughes, Covenir's procurement director, as he led me through their facility. "We had a unique launching point," I explained. "An established team, proven expertise, just under a new banner. And without the family drama, I hear." He gave me a knowing look. "Nashville's business community isn't that large, Valerie. Word gets around." I maintained a professional smile. "Every company has its evolution story." "Indeed. Well, we're excited to work with you directly. Your reputation for hands-on management is exactly what we need for our supply chain overhaul. Later that afternoon, I returned to our new permanent offices, a renovated warehouse space with exposed brick walls, open workstations, and private meeting rooms named after our first clients. In just 3 months, we'd grown from 8 employees to 23. Jordan met me at the door with barely contained excitement. The Connors and Tate board accepted our counter-proposal. We're officially their primary logistics partner for the next 3 years. I felt a complex wave of emotions: satisfaction, vindication, and a touch of melancholy. Have they announced it internally yet? Scheduled for tomorrow morning. Lana will have to explain to the entire company that they're now subcontracting their core business function to her sister's firm. That can't have been an easy pill for her to swallow. Jordan grinned. From what I hear, she fought it until the end. The board finally gave her an ultimatum: accept the partnership or resign. Decide. She won't forgive me for this. Not ever. Do you care? It was a fair question. The relationship between Lana and me had been broken long before this business conflict. Still, there was a finality to this arrangement that felt heavier than simple business competition. I care, I admitted, but not enough to sacrifice what we're building here. The formal announcement of our partnership with Connors and Tate triggered a new phase of growth for VC Strategy Group. With our former employer now effectively our largest client, we had the stability to pursue aggressive expansion. 6 months after Lana fired me, I found myself preparing for a meeting I never expected to have. My father had requested lunch, just the 2 of us at his favorite steakhouse. He was already seated when I arrived, looking older than I remembered. The stress of the company's near collapse had taken a visible toll. "You look well, Val," he said as I sat down. "Success suits you." "Thank you," I replied, uncertain where this conversation was heading. "I owe you an apology," he continued, surprising me. "Several, actually." I waited, giving him space to elaborate. "I should have recognized your talents years ago. Should have made you CEO when I stepped down." He shook his head. I was blinded by traditional thinking. The oldest child inherits the crown regardless of capability. Lana had her strengths, I offered, feeling an unexpected urge to defend my sister. She did, but they weren't the right ones for leading the company. He looked directly at me. "You outmaneuvered all of us, Val. Created your own safety net right under our noses. I'm not sure whether to be angry or impressed." "Both would be appropriate," I said with a small smile. "The board is considering a restructuring," he said after a pause. "They want to bring you back. Not just your company as a contractor, but you personally as CEO." I nearly choked on my water. And Lana? She'd transitioned to Chief Marketing Officer, her natural strength. She'd never accept that. "She already has," he replied. "Conditionally." "What condition?" "That you two find a way to repair your relationship. That's why I'm here, Val. Not just as your father but as the company founder. We need both of you working together instead of against each other." I sat back, processing this unexpected development. "I don't know if that's possible." "Perhaps not, but isn't it worth trying?" I wasn't sure. The gulf between Lana and me had grown so wide, I couldn't imagine bridging it now. As I left our new headquarters on a crisp autumn evening 6 months after launching my own company, I couldn't help but smile at the illuminated sign above our door. The journey from being fired to building a thriving business had been challenging but immensely satisfying. With 35 employees now, multi-million-dollar contracts, and even Connors and Tate as our client, I had transformed Betrayal into spectacular success. Looking toward the future, I knew I had many more chapters to write in my business story. But the sweetest one would always be how my sister's attempt to push me aside had inadvertently given me the empire I truly deserved.